Hey, hi, everybody. This is Mark Sims again, asking just a few questions. Just a few questions. Maureen Kelleher is on the line. She is a senior writer and editor of Education Post. So, Maureen, you got to answer the first question. What is Education Post?
Education Post is a network of blogger activists all over the United States who are passionate about education and dedicated to improving it, especially for the children who are most underserved.
So, you've been with Education Post for how long?
I have been with them for 2.5 years.
Oh, wow! But we were talking before we started that you did your graduate school here, but your undergrad was out east somewhere. Where was it?
Oh, I was at Yale. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I want you to say. Yale. Excuse me. So you got your undergrad in what at Yale? What was it in?
English.
English, and your graduate degree at the University of Chicago here in Chicago.
In English education, I started my career as a teacher before I turned to writing about the subject.
So you went to these fine, august institutions, and after all of that education, you wanted to teach.
True. And I did for a little while, but honestly, teaching is an extremely hard job. And one of the things I learned about myself was that I do better watching it and writing about it than being in the mix.
And you were saying offline that you said you did
Oh,
Teach for America before Teach for America started.
yeah. I actually did a program called the Jesuit Volunteer Corps. Wendy Kopp, founder of Teach for America, and I graduated from college the same year. So Teach for America did not exist, but I had that impulse that I wanted to serve and I wanted to help out at schools. And I found a different avenue to try and do it. And as I told you before we started, what I learned was you got to know how to do it before you step in the classroom. And that's why I went back to graduate school to get a master's in English education.
So how well did you know the founder of Teach for America? How well did you know
Uh,
her in school?
No, we were in different schools at the same time. Although I admired that work so much, I actually applied for a job as a recruiter. I had an interview. I was not accepted for the position, but I did at that time, and that's what I think people don't remember now. In those days, uh, people looked at that as a really important way to meet a need and also an avenue for a lot of young people who were looking for a way to give back and serve at a time when most young college students were being encouraged to do things like investment banking.
Yeah. Okay, I got to go back to my. I could talk that. I can go that line of thinking straight through to the end of the interview. But let me go with my main question. If you had a crystal ball, if you were in charge of a school system like here in Chicago, or had Artie Duncan's old job, Betsy DeVos's job, how would you improve public education for low income students?
Well, I think the number one thing that would improve education, particularly for low income students, but also across the board, would be as a school system leader, particularly to work really hard to insist on and to offer the right supports and to be the warm demander. So when we talk about what a good classroom teacher is, a good classroom teacher is someone who sets very high expectations for the students in the room and also offers the support, both academic and emotional, for them to read it. Um, One of the biggest problems that's been identified in schools across the board is the lack of academic challenge, and this particularly affects classrooms with low-income kids and kids of color. Let's face it, more than something like between 80 and 90% of the teacher workforce in the United States is white women. Um, and their expectations of kids color what they do in the classroom. And I say this as a white woman who probably brought plenty of implicit bias to her interactions with students. This occurs, we hear about this a lot in discipline, who gets monitored, but it also comes in what we think kids can do, and we're trying to help them by making the intellectual work easier. As adults, we have to get comfortable with the idea of productive struggle, and that it's not going to be kids have to do the intellectual work in the class. The teacher cannot do it all. This is a huge challenge in schools and districts right now. People are trying to figure out how to offer the right mix of challenge and support. We need to think about how to set up the challenge so that kids are not bored. My own kid is a fifth grader, and she's just telling me how bored she is in school already. I'm like, oh no. Um, we need to think about how to create environments in classrooms that challenge kids and spark their intellectual curiosity. That's, I think, the thing that is most lacking in public education today.
And how do you do that with so many students here in the United States come from, low income homes, destabilized homes, homes of drama, homes where, we're just trying to get through the day. Education is not top on the list. How do you overcome
Well,
the effects of poverty?
Well, it can be done. I mean, I'll tell you. So we live on the south side in back of the yards where there's plenty of households like that. And our neighborhood school is fantastic. We changed schools because we want Spanish, and that's the only thing our neighborhood school didn't have to do. And now my kid is bored in her new school, which is getting a lot higher in the rankings and gets a lot more attention. I'm not going to name the school to protect my child's privacy, but our neighborhood school has 900 kids, 99% low income, and many of whom are English learners, and they are doing the work. They have a really strong principal. He's thought very hard about how to make sure that teachers get the training they need. They bring in the right mix of projects and personalized learning software. They do it. They do what they got to do, and you ask anybody in the neighborhood, there are parents from all over the neighborhood banging on the door to get in that school. It's one of the best schools, especially for math. It's one of the top schools in the city for math.
Your school is evidently doing the right things, but there are private schools right down the street or not far away who are allowing students to slip through the cracks of education, and they're going to be. I don't know what's going to happen to some of these young men, especially the men, and some girls too. I mean, the kids slip through the cracks. How do we catch them before they slip through the cracks?
That is the hardest thing. And I mean, I have walked that journey. I know a young man who the education system failed, and it was the same school under different leadership, and he's no longer with us. That's the reality. So to stop that, we have to really, I agree that we have to start young. We have to, be watching kids from the beginning. With the young man that I'm thinking about right now, one of the many issues he had going on was that it's very likely he had dyslexia, and it was untreated. We have to do a better job of making sure all our kids, particularly our English language learners, learn how to crack the code of written English. We have to make sure that we teach phonics in a way that everybody gets it, that they get that there are some rules to the language, even though English is a very complex, strange language. We got to figure out how to teach them the code so that they can do it. And then we have to stay in touch and build bridges with families when families are in trouble. And school-family relations are a terrible sticking point, and I think we all know that. So, yeah.
Well, personally, I hated school. A lot of folks hate school because we weren't good at it. Let me try to quote Sir Ken Robinson the best I can. Let me read this and try to quote it. He says, "My conviction is that kids love to learn. That's not the problem. Rather, it's the construct of school that beats the love to learn out of students." Amen. Because 50 years ago, a little bit more than 50 years ago, school, the construct of school, and that's probably how my brain just didn't like school. I didn't like the structure. I didn't like, I just didn't like it. It didn't work. And I'm still angry 50-something years later, only because I know children are falling through the cracks I did 50 years, people did 100 years ago. Should we change the structure of education in America for some students?
Well, honestly, I wish we could figure out a way to blow up the structure of education for all students. Because I was a kid who did great in school, but I think I wasted a lot of time. I think there were lots of things I could have learned that I didn't learn. There were a lot of things I had to learn as an adult that nobody ever taught me. I really would love to see us take an approach where kids do more problem solving, where kids have more control over their learning, where there's more opportunity for people to collaborate and decide on problems to solve, where there's more real world stuff. I mean, we're warehousing kids in buildings. We have one teacher for 28 or 30 students or 36 students or who knows what in CPS right now. It's not enough adult attention. Kids need adults, particularly kids where the adults in their lives are busy, stressed, or otherwise checked out, they need adults. We don't put enough grown-ups in enough proximity to kids. I really believe this. I mean, the research on class size will tell you about academic outcomes and will say, oh, you move a few adults, you move a few more kids in a room with an adult who's a great teacher and they'll still learn. But that's not measuring the effects for kids on adult relationships, their desire to be in school. What the research tells us is for class size reduction to have a real effect, you have to get down to numbers that are unheard of right now. You have to get down to like a 1 to 15 ratio or smaller. And everyone just laughs and says, well, forget it. And I'm like, these are our young people. This is our future. Children need adults. If we can't figure out how to get our relationships between adults and children into the right place, and we can't figure out how to get the ratio of kids to an adult to the point where an adult can actually build relationship, then we're a mess. And that's part of why school doesn't work. The other part is we ask kids to sit and get. We don't ask them to tell us what their problems they want to solve are. We don't give them opportunities to follow their intellectual passions. We don't make it interesting. We don't make it challenging. If we combined that relational work with opportunities for kids to follow their own curiosity, we would see a really different educational structure in this country.
Maureen Kelleher, I can talk education for hours, but on the podcast, I can't. Can I have you back in the next 2 or 3 months, but at least before the end of the year? Can I have you back?
Absolutely.
Maureen Kelleher, editor of Education Post, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mark. It's been a pleasure.